Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mort Golub.
I'm Mort Klein, and one of the things we enjoy doing most is introducing you to the men and women who are helping to lead and shape the Jewish world and Jewish life. And a man who's been doing a Herculean job for more than 20 years is my special guest today on L'Chaim, Mort Klein, who since 1993 has served as the president of the Zionist Organization of America, known to everyone as ZOA, and Mort has been a champion of the state of Israel in virtually every possible way. Mort Klein is known as something of a maverick, who's not afraid to speak his mind or challenge authority when he believes the interests of the Jewish people and the state of Israel are at stake. And Mort Klein, it is an honor and privilege to have you sitting at this table. Thank you very, very much.
It's my honor to be with you, Mark, and the extraordinary work you do promoting the truth of the Arab war against Israel, really, and many other issues.
And I want to begin right there. But I want our audience to know, we're taping today in August. It is during Operation Protective Edge, although as we sit together at this table, Israel and Hamas is in the midst of what we hope to be a 72-hour ceasefire. But one of the reasons why it's very important for you to be at this table right now is I want the audience to hear your perspective. And I want to say one more thing before you begin. One of the things I'm trying to do with Shalom TV is give Israelis a chance to speak in their own voice. And very often on American television, everything that happens in Israel is filtered through commentators. Most commentators on television, by the way, are not legitimate journalists. They are entertainers. They are people whose greatest skill is reading from a teleprompter. They know nothing. Mort, they know nothing. And they're easily swayed by what public opinion has to say, what seems to be in the wind, or what their producers have on their own agenda. And it is shocking when if one has any sense of knowledge of a given area of life, and all of us are experts in something, and in most things we know very, very little, but every now and then there's an area where we know. I happen to know a lot about Israel, and so do you. It is astounding to me how little American television anchors know about the Middle East, the Israeli-Arab conflict, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the Israeli-Hamas conflict, the Hamas-Fatah conflict. They know so little that what I come away with is saying to myself, if in an area of life I know that they know so little, why do I ever assume in areas that I don't have expertise in that I'm listening to people who know anything? They know nothing. So one important thing that Shalom TV does is permit Israelis to come on Shalom TV and speak in their own voice and to counter the nonsense we hear on American television. And then the other thing I want to do is I want the people who are really on the front lines of American Jewry, and you're one of them, Mort. And not everybody on the front lines agrees, and they don't have to agree. And in some ways, as I said in the opening, you have been a champion of the state of Israel even when it makes you unpopular, even among Jewish leadership. And I think it's important for us to hear what you have to say, and so I'm very, very grateful that you made the trip out here and are sitting at this table. And I want to say, I want to begin by giving you an opportunity, just an opportunity, as you're looking at the way in which Israel's attempt to put an end to Hamas rocket attacks and tunnel incursions is being depicted in the American media and within the Jewish community. What troubles you the most, and what do you wish all of us understood better?
First of all, I never even used the term Hamas-Israel conflict, Arab-Israel conflict, because it is Hamas war against Israel. It's an Arab war against Israel. If Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, the Arabs, wanted peace with Israel, they could have had it since 1948. But their goal is not peace. Their goal is Israel's destruction. The proof of which, by the way, is in 1937, the Palestinian Arabs, under the Peel Commission, was offered 95% of the rest of Palestine. Jordan has 80% of original Palestine. And the Jews were given 5%. The Arabs said no. In 1948, they essentially split the rest of Palestine. Israel accepted it. 6 Arab armies invaded Israel to try to destroy it. In 2000, they were offered a state by Ehud Barak on 95% of the disputed territories and parts of Jerusalem. In 2008, under Ehud Olmert, they were offered even more, and parts of Israel itself to give it 100% of the total landmass. They said no. Because every time they were offered it, they're required to sign a clause that says no further claims, that they will not make any more issues, it's over. They won't do it. Only a month ago, Mahmoud Abbas told publicly President Obama, if you want me to sign an agreement that says no further claims, I'll never do it. So I want people to understand, this is an Arab war against Israel, against the Jewish state. The interest is destruction and murdering Jews. It has nothing to do with Palestinian statehood, because they could have had a state. 4 times it was offered to them, and they rejected it every time.
This is very clear to you, is it not?
Crystal clear.
Okay. Mort, why is it not clear in the way in which the American administration and the American media portrays the conflict?
There's nothing more painful for those who want peace between the Arabs and the Israelis to realize that land doesn't do it, statehood doesn't do it. That means there's no resolution. And that is an ugly and painful thought. So it's so much more delicious, and it feels so much better to think it's about land, because that can be resolved. That can be given away. It's about statehood. That can be given away. But in fact, so to realize it's not about that, you have to throw up your hands and realize all Israel can do is maintain a status quo, protect themselves as best they can, because the Arabs do not want peace with the Jewish state no matter what. Even Hamas, this battle, Hamas's charter calls for the murder of every Jew, Article 7. Almost no one in the media says that. Of course, they call for Israel's destruction. This is a Nazi-like group, Hamas. They want all the Jews murdered. And even Fatah, which is the Palestinian Authority, ruling party in the Palestinian Arab territories, 10 clauses of their Fatah charter, not the PLO charter, their own, call for Israel's destruction. Abbas has publicly called for Israel's destruction many times in Arabic. It's ignored. Says he's against a Jewish state. It's ignored. And it's very painful to realize that peace between the Arabs and the Israelis is not possible as long as the Palestinian Authority will not recognize that the Jews have a right to a Jewish state in their midst. So this is almost never said by politicians, Jewish leaders, TV commentators, because one reason politicians don't say it, both in Israel and here, is because politicians are there to cite a solution, to promote a solution. When there's no solution, it's very painful. And that's why people all across the spectrum refuse to acknowledge this fact.
Okay. You're telling us that from Mort Klein's viewpoint, there is no solution?
Well, first of all, the only possibility that a solution could take place is if the United States and Europe, but the United States would say, Mr. Abbas, unless you end your alliance with Hamas, which is a recent alliance with a terrorist Nazi state, unless you stop promoting hatred and violence in your schools, in your media, in your speeches and sermons, violence against Jews and against Israel, unless you stop naming schools and streets, sports teams, sports tournaments against, you name them for people who've murdered Jews, honoring and glorifying the murder of Jews, unless you stop giving pensions to the families of Arabs who have murdered Jews and died doing so, we're not going to give you any more money. We give the Palestinian Authority over $500 million a year. Europe gives them huge amounts of money. If America and the world would say, unless you honor the Oslo agreements, which require the things I just mentioned, change your maps to show Israel, even within the 67 line. This is a Fatah, the so-called moderate Mahmoud Abbas emblem of the Fatah party, the ruling party, showing all of Israel with a kafiyah over all of it, not just within the 67 line, all of it, a picture of the arch-terrorist Arafat, a Kalashnikov rifle promoting terrorism. America should say, unless you get rid of this type of emblem, you'll get no more support and no more money. But that never happens. Never.
Because?
I think there's a fear that they won't do it, and they won't actually change their ways and change their attitudes, change their charters and their emblems, and then America will have to withdraw and announce it hopeless. And politicians in America and the world don't want to do that. They want to keep believing if you give them a state, it'll work, ignoring the fact they've been offered statehood twice in the last 15 years alone, they've turned it down. But if they did that, that would be one way that they would realize, the Palestinian Authority, Hamas, it's over. No more support, no more money unless you change.
Okay.
That's never happened.
Okay. I want to understand and I want the audience to understand where your ideology is. If we were both shocked and Mahmoud Abbas heard this interview and said, you know what, Mort Klein makes a lot of sense. I'm going to do exactly what he said. And I'm going to put an end to all terrorism. I'm going to condemn Hamas. I'm going to condemn the textbooks in the Palestinian schools which describe Jews as pigs and in some way continue to perpetuate this idea of seen in the protocols of Zion. I'm going to stop all of this ranting against Jews on PA television. And I'm going to say to Israel, we recognize your right to exist as a Jewish, free, sovereign state on part of the land of Palestine, and we are going to live side by side with you, and I can't promise you that there won't be some Palestinian extremists who will still fight, and we'll do our best with you to keep that from happening, but we're ready to live with you. If Mahmoud Abbas said all that, is Mort Klein prepared to give up the West Bank, or most of the West Bank, whatever it is, to create another Arab Palestinian state living alongside Israel?
So you've proposed.
You couldn't say yes to me.
Well, I will answer you. No, I don't avoid questions. I answer them as best I know how.
But you couldn't say yes.
I will say this. If he did all you asked, all you said, all that I said, which is simply honoring the written Oslo agreements, all of that is required in Oslo. It's nothing new. And now, after 20 years where they haven't done any of it, it would be important for them to do it for a significant period of time and not announce it. I want the names off the buildings for Arab
We'll talk
killers.
about that in a moment. What you're saying is, if
If
they
he did
proved
it-
over time that he was serious,
If they did this over a period of 1 or 2 years, no matter what my position might be, a state would evolve.
no, I want to know what your, and the reason I ask you is this. There are some Jews who would sit in that chair, and they would say, at the moment there is no Palestinian leadership with which to make a two-state solution. But if there were, I still don't want it, because it's Eretz Yisrael, and I'm not going to give up 1 square inch of territory. I want to know if that's really your position. That ultimately, even if they were the most peaceful people on earth, Mort Klein would not want there to be a Palestinian state on the West Bank.
First of all, I cannot speak for my board until we meet that.
Mort, this is so clear. Either you're ready to say yes if there were a peaceful Palestinian presence.
You're asking me to support.
I am ready to give up territory, or you're with those who say I don't care if they're peaceful or not, and then it becomes a different argument. And I want to know where you stand.
You're asking me to support a Marshall Plan in 1941.
I'm not. I'm asking you conceptually, do you accept the notion of sharing the land if you're sharing it with Canada?
The Palestinian Authority is so far from anything near that.
I know, but I gave
It
you
is
a
really
hypothetical.
not.
I gave
It's
you
not.
a
It's
I
not
gave you a
appropriate for me to answer a hypothetical where they're so far from any possibility of that happening.
Yes, it really is. Not only is it appropriate, it's necessary that Mort Klein tell the world, is Mort Klein really against a two-state solution because the Palestinians are not peace partners? Or is Mort Klein really against the two-state solution because no matter who it is, even if it was Canada, he wouldn't want to give up the West Bank? That's a fair question to ask you.
First of all, I don't use the term two-state solution. Israel's already a state. This is a misnomer no one should ever use.
Okay, but you know what I mean.
You mean a Palestinian state solution?
Yes.
Since I'm president of ZOA, I really have no right to answer that unless my board takes that position.
Okay,
We've taken no position.
Our audience is not stupid, and they'll understand exactly what you're saying. It changes the power of your argument. It diminishes the power of your argument because it's not for you whether we should or should not have what people call a two-state solution. I understand what you
Palestinian
mean.
state solution.
Yes, I understand what you mean. By the way, I think it's a very important point. Nobody's making it but you. I accept
Correct.
that. I accept that insight. However, everybody understands what we're talking about, and we now understand where you or ZOA stand. How do you think the main Jewish leadership today approach the same subject? In other words, as I hear you talk, I'm saying to myself, in this area alone, does Mort say anything that the general American leadership would not endorse? And my instinct is to say that what you are doing is articulating what I would now say the vast majority of American leadership, excluding the left, say is the reality Israel is facing, namely that Israel has tried to facilitate some kind of Palestinian autonomy, nationalism, statehood on some part of what is Palestine on the western side of the Jordan River, and the Palestinians have basically torpedoed every single attempt to do so. I believe most Jewish leadership would agree with you. Do you think I'm wrong?
No. I think if Abbas said we accept Israel as a Jewish state, most Jewish leaders, not the Jewish people of America, because in every major poll, when American Jews are asked, do you support the establishment of a Palestinian state, the overwhelming majority say no. That's never cited. Even the American Jewish Committee polls, ZOA's polls, the vast majority say no. And when asked why, they answer because their goal is to destroy Israel. This will increase their ability to do so. Most American Jewish leaders would probably support establishing a state if he simply says a few things, because their interest is to have access to the White House, to seem reasonable to other politicians, as opposed to really looking analytically at the reality of the situation, where this is a Nazi-like state who wants to destroy Israel and murder Jews. I believe they would accept this. But these same Jewish leaders, we have to remember this is never mentioned. The heads of every major organization supported Oslo, hook, line, and sinker, supported giving land away immediately, supported that Yasser Arafat as a moderate peace partner, supported giving Gaza away, the rest of Gaza away, thinking this will bring peace, and of course supporting a state. They've never been held accountable. Every major Jewish leader has been wrong about Oslo, wrong about Arafat, wrong about Abbas, wrong about the Gaza withdrawal, including many major well-known Jewish analysts in the White House and elsewhere have supported all of this. They're not held accountable. It is shocking to me that many of these people are still asked to give lectures about their wisdom of the Arab war against Israel, even though they've been wrong about everything. To ask these people to give lectures and their opinions about this is like asking a lawyer who's lost every case he's had to be your lawyer. And they're never held accountable. And that's troubling. So I think that they would spring into action, support it, as long as Abbas said a few words, even though for 20 years he's acted as a terrorist. His combining with Hamas shows where he really stands. And America embracing the Hamas-Fatah alliance and Europe embracing the Hamas-Fatah alliance, to me, and I've written about it in the Jerusalem Post, was a diplomatic Kristallnacht. A diplomatic Kristallnacht where the world is accepting a Nazi-like regime whose commitment is to murder Jews and destroy Israel, and the world has accepted this, including the United States of America, who continues to say they'll support and fund this regime. Only last week, President Obama sent $47 million to Gaza, which goes right into the Hamas's coffers. $47 million. I think this is illegal, and yet it's happened, and he's pledged $440 million more to the Palestinian Authority-Hamas alliance. And the reason they're able to get away with this is because Jewish leaders have really not made a serious issue out of this, and none of them say end the aid to the Palestinian Authority. They continue to violate their agreements, including AIPAC. I've pleaded with AIPAC to link the $500 million or more in aid to the Palestinian Authority, to their compliance and fulfilling their commitments under 20-year-old Oslo, and AIPAC has fought me tooth and nail. In fact, they support aid to the Palestinian Authority. ZOA does not, as long as they're violating every aspect of Oslo.
I'll tell you what I hear.
Yes.
They're not here to defend themselves, but I want to, and I'm not trying, I don't think that I'm qualified to defend them as well as they would defend themselves, but I do want to tell you what I hear, and then you answer it. And there's a lot you said. Oslo was basically ratified by the State of Israel. By the State of Israel. So if there were Jewish leaders in America who were supportive of Oslo, they were supporting what Israel seemed to want. And there was an idealism out of which Oslo was born. And yes, there are people who said Oslo is a sham. And it seems that as the years have gone by, those who were skeptical of Oslo are more correct than those who were idealistic. But it's very hard for me to be critical of any Jewish leader who, in 1993, was supportive of what Israel was trying to do. And there was, again, with, Rabin brought in a certain kind of hopefulness. And so I certainly understand that. Number two, when I talk to Jewish leaders, I don't hear them giving Abbas a pass. And I have many people sit at this table who are as critical of Abbas as are you, who also talk about a Nazi-like regime that Hamas represents. And they may talk, when you're with them, they may talk differently than they do when they talk here, but I haven't heard the kind of distinction you're drawing between yourself and Jewish leadership. And then the last thing you talked about, which is why give aid? What I've heard people say is the following. Israel does not want the Palestinian Authority to lose money, and that basically what is necessary to do is to support whatever, quote, moderate Palestinians exist in an effort to strengthen them against the extremists. And that ultimately it would be enormously counterproductive. It would hurt the State of Israel. It would also be counterproductive to yank the rug out from under a Palestinian Authority which has, to one degree or another, not nearly as much as we'd like, but to one degree or another, cooperated with the State of Israel on terrorism issues, on police issues, and the reality is that the condition of Palestinians on the West Bank has significantly improved, and prior to the Hamas-Israeli war, the West Bank was everything's relatively calm. And that therefore, the reason why Americans, including AIPAC, do not say to the Obama administration, cut off aid, is that they believe it is the lesser of the two evils. And that your approach is so extreme, it would damage whatever chance we have of developing a moderate Palestinian leadership. Now that's what you would hear, and I'm sure you've heard it, and now you have the right to counter.
Well, you said many things here. I can say all the organizations supported aid, even under Arafat. When there was terrorism, from daily terrorism and suicide bombings, where almost 2,000 Jews were murdered, 10,000 maimed, not one Jewish organization said, let's stop the aid. So from 2000 to 2006, we had a monstrous terror war against Israel. You heard none of them saying that. The security cooperation is a myth. There's been some. I'll tell you, when I speak to Israeli leaders, they tell me, certainly in the last 6 months, it has collapsed completely. And the Palestinian Authority
Are you only talking about Israeli leaders on the far right? Because I don't hear that.
No,
I don't hear that.
I talk to defense officials in Israel. I'm not talking about political leaders.
Do they go on the record with you, or off the record?
I have conversations. We don't discuss off or on the record.
But you know what I mean.
All I can say is I talk to the top people. I know them personally.
And they say what to you?
They say, one, the security relationship with the Palestinians has been way overstated. They arrest almost no one ever. We do 99% of the arrests. They do almost none. And that in the last 6 months, there's almost no cooperation. It has really collapsed. But certainly, during the 6 years of the terror war, when things were monstrous, no Jewish organization was calling to end aid to the Palestinian Authority. If we made a serious issue that if you don't do A, B, and C, you'll get no more money, then the Palestinian Authority would have to make a serious decision. Do we really want peace with the Jewish state? Because if we don't really move forward as the way we promised in our Oslo written agreements, we're going to lose all money, everything's going to collapse. They'd be forced to make a decision. This status quo, I'm not excluding this Hamas war against Israel, is a very uncomfortable status quo, where there's still terrorism. I've been told by the top guys in defense that if the Israeli security officials, IDF and police force, were not in Judea and Samaria and the Arab areas, there would be constant terrorism coming into Israel. Defense helps a bit. The most important thing is we're there. If we would leave there, all hell would break loose, I'm told by the top officials. So no, it would be very important to make it clear we're not going to fund a terrorist regime like Fatah. Then they'd have to make a decision. And every Jewish organization supported the Gaza withdrawal. One of the few votes in the Conference of Presidents, the vote, there were 52 organizations then, was 51-1 to support the withdrawal from Gaza, to throw 10,000 Jews out. Every Jewish organization except ZOA voted for it. Even though we were predicting, as were others, this is going to lead to a terror enclave in Gaza. This is a disaster, not to mention harming the lives of 10,000 Jews who were living there. And every major guy in Israel, political and defense, will tell you, had we not left Gaza, Hamas could not have gotten to the control. They wouldn't have these missiles. The underground tunnels couldn't have been formed because we'd have intelligence there. This was a serious mistake. And the world is not saying anything about the fact that Israel threw out every Jew, all the IDF, gave it all to them, and despite that, we get a terrorist enclave. Because their interest is not running their own lives. Their interest is Israel's destruction. And I would like the Jewish organizations to be held accountable for supporting the throwing of 10,000 Jews out of their homes by force and helping to create a terrorist state. None of them are held accountable. And I think it's high time people will say, why did you support this sort of thing? And by the way, you mentioned AIPAC. I'm sorry to say publicly, AIPAC, even though Israeli officials, Israeli leaders, Israeli prime ministers, has begged AIPAC to support the right of Jews to live in Judea and Samaria, AIPAC has never supported the right of Jewish communities to remain in Judea and Samaria. They say they take no position.
I thought they take no position.
That's what I just said.
And that's what they're supposed to do, take no position.
The Israeli government supports the right of Jews to live in Efrat and Ariel and Ma'ale Adumim and such. AIPAC does not support the Israeli government position. Several prime ministers have told me they've pleaded with AIPAC to support this.
They don't oppose it either.
No, but when they say to a senator or a congressperson, we take no position, it implies they're against it. When Howard Kors said to me, no, it doesn't, we just simply say nothing. I said, Howard, if you said to your wife, honey, do you love me? And she said to you, Howard, I'm not taking a position on that. Do you think you'd be in trouble?
I don't think that's a fair analogy.
That is a fair. That is a
cute.
That is
it's not a fair analogy.
When a Jewish lobbyist on Capitol Hill is asked by senators, we're asked always, do you support the right of Jews to live in Judea and Samaria? If we say we take no position, they think, my God, you're not too comfortable with it.
Exactly.
And that's a problem.
True.
So AIPAC, when they say they support whatever the Israeli government wants, it's not true. They've never supported the right of Jews to live in Judea and Samaria.
In general, is AIPAC doing a good job?
They have good relationships with many members on the Hill. That's primarily due to the fact that, thank God, American Christians overwhelmingly support Israel over the Arabs. That's why these people support Israel, not because of anyone's lobbying. But I'm sorry to say that AIPAC convinced Congress that Oslo is a great idea, that Arafat is now a moderate peacemaker, that Abbas is a moderate peacemaker, that leaving Gaza and throwing 10,000 Jews, they were all over the Hill, convincing members of the House and Senate it's a good idea. So they've promoted an agenda which has been very harmful to Israel, this Oslo and Gaza withdrawal business. So I have to tell the truth, that concerns me. They've taken positions that have been detrimental to Israel, and they've never said Jews have a right to live in Zionist America. Even if it becomes a Palestinian Arab state, why can't Jews live there? And when people in the Jewish organization say, well, we can't have them live there, it'll be too dangerous. And I say, you want to set up another Arab state where Jews could be killed if they live there? Well, that's not a very peaceful state, is it? So if anyone can say it's too dangerous for Jews to remain in a Palestinian Arab state, this is not the type of state that anyone on earth should allow to come into fruition.
By the way, we may not agree on every point, but I hope people just heard you, because to me, it is an outrage that any American, and certainly any American Jew, would ever endorse an Arab state, Palestinian or otherwise, where Jews are not permitted to live in peace. The notion that we would facilitate that, and we Jewish liberals, it is the most fascist, unliberal thing you could possibly imagine. And I don't understand why every single Jewish organization doesn't say, by the way, one thing goes without saying. We're not interested in talking about any peace accommodation that doesn't include the right for Jews to live under Palestinian sovereignty.
And Mark, Mahmoud Abbas has said on many occasions, the moderate, that once we have our state, no Jew will be allowed to live in it. Saeb Erekat, a top leader, has said the same. Sari Noseba, who people say is a moderate leader of the Palestinian Authority, has said no Jew will be allowed
Okay,
here.
the problem, Mort...
And no one raises that issue.
But the problem, Mort, is that when I do raise that issue, people with whom I raise it always have a quote that they can show me where Abbas has taken it back or has moderated. They also never talk about what he says in Arabic. And Itamar Marcus, Palestinian Media Watch, it is blood-curdling to me to hear and see what the Palestinian Authority, not Hamas, what Fatah, Palestinian Authority, says, writes, and what cartoons it posts on its own website. But it's never discussed by Washington, and I hear it rarely discussed within the Jewish world.
And this promotion of hatred and violence against Jews in every aspect of their culture is how they get suicide bombers to want to go out and kill Jews, because they are convinced that Jews are a vile, despicable, warlike people that are ruining the world, and that it's a mitzvah. It's a wonderful thing to kill Jews. They're convinced of this. That's how they're able to become suicide bombers. Just like the Nazis convinced their population the Jews are vile and a disgraceful, disgusting people that are dangerous to the world. That's how most Germans supported the Nazi concentration camps.
We're going to come back to that in a moment. Again, in an attempt to have you answer what people would ask you if they were at this table. So, Mort, what do you want to do in the meantime? What do you want Israel to be in the meantime? Is Israel going to remain a, quote, occupying power? And whether you like the word occupation or not, one thing is true. Israel is controlling the lives of another people who don't want to be controlled by the state of Israel. That's a reality. And people have a right to say to you, if you don't believe a two-state solution or another state solution,
Palestinian state solution
is workable, meaningful, efficacious in any way, then tell me how you want Israel to remain, and now you hear this all the time, a democratic Jewish state that also has a certain sense of Jewish tam. The word tam means, style, soul, flavor. To what extent does Israel stay a Jewish state, and at the same time, here we are, basically controlling the lives of people who don't want their lives controlled?
First of all, your premise, Mark, with all due respect, is simply not true or accurate. Right now, Israel's given away 100% of Gaza. They gave away 85% under Rabin. So they control virtually their own lives there.
No, they don't. But I can't believe you do not know the extent to which there is a very specific Israeli blockade on three sides of Gaza, and a blockade by Egypt on the. And therefore, to say to me or to anybody that Mort Klein believes that the Palestinians who live in Gaza have the right to live a normal life, it destroys your credibility.
Mark, do you think the Israelis want to check goods that are coming to
Doesn't matter.
Gaza?
No, they don't. They don't. And there would be no border if Gazans wanted to live in peace with Israel.
They allow everything in there, except to the best of their ability, missiles and rockets.
I just want to know how you want to solve a problem where, whether you like it or not, we're in control of another people.
Israel has a choice. Can we allow materials to come in, like concrete?
No, I don't want to let that. No, I don't want any materials to come in. I don't want it.
Well, Israel allows everything to come in.
I just want to know, how do we deal with what do you want to do about it?
They have their own parliament. They run their own schools. They run their own media.
They run their own life like you and I would want to live.
It's not true. They run.
It is true.
You can say it's true, but they run all aspects of their lives, except Israel is doing their best to keep out.
Can they travel in and out of Gaza freely? Can they fish off the Mediterranean Sea more than 3 nautical miles? Do they control the amount of electricity that they have in Gaza?
Israel checks as to whether they allow people to leave, to make sure that
and I want them
there's
to.
not
I want Israel to do it. The only difference between you and me is I understand that while I want it to happen, it means in some way we are controlling their lives. And my question for you is, how do we end it if you and I agree there's no peaceful...
It can only be ended if the world says, we support Israel, you will get no more monies, we condemn you as a terrorist regime. And in Judea and Samaria, 42% of Judea and Samaria has been given away by the Israelis. They can have their own parliament. They elect their own parliament. Of course, it's a dictatorship. 9 years, for 9 years, there's been no elections. They have their own schools, their own media. They control all their lives except security. All their lives security. And the only reason Israel is forced against their will to maintain security is because they continue to try to kill Jews.
I don't disagree with you. I only want to know what the solution is.
There's no...
And by the way, you have said the solution. I want to make sure the audience hears it. Because ultimately you and I do agree. The only solution is for the world to step in, not Israel. Israel can't do it alone. The world has to say to the Arab world, this will not stand.
Would any American want to live in Israel, want an Israeli government to say, Gaza, you can get any armamentarium, any materials where you can build more tunnels? Does the Abbas in the Palestinian Authority territories in Judea and Samaria will have no security people there. You can have terror cells and be able to sneak into Israel. The Palestinian Authority and Hamas's actions force Israel to do this against their will for one reason, in order to protect the citizens of Israel. Israel would love to stop doing this. It is the Hamas and Fatah and the Palestinian Authority that forces Israel to maintain this type of security in order to defend their people, which is the first and most important role of any government, to protect and defend their people. I blame any of this on the actions and speeches of Hamas, on the actions and speeches of Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian Authority. If they would start acting like a civilized people, accepting Israel, there would be no more security interests, no more blockades.
And I only want to add, and to me it's not personal. I don't believe it's about a person named Barack Obama. But I do believe the American administration has been culpable as well. The American administration stood by and watched. Every rocket Hamas fired was an illegal act of war against Israel, against an ally of the United States. And the American administration permitted it and said nothing. And to me, it's not simply Hamas and Fatah. I blame our government and I blame the Western world for permitting the kind of assault on Israel day after day after day.
Well, you are correct. If there are no Hamas missiles aimed at major population centers to murder innocent civilians of Israel, there'd be no defensive retaliation by the Israeli government. No Hamas missiles, no retaliation. Every person who's killed in Gaza, it is the fault of Hamas and no one else. And let me tell you something else. Obama and his people, President Obama, has said on many occasions, to this minute, we support Israel's right to defend themselves. They say it ad infinitum, ad nauseum. And then right after they say that, Obama and Susan Rice, who we just met with in Washington last week, she's the head of the National Security Council, after she says Israel's right to defend themselves, she says, but we demand an immediate, unconditional ceasefire, which means Israel must immediately stop defending themselves. It should be up to Israel whether it should be an immediate ceasefire.
It's very upsetting to me.
They have sided with Hamas over Israel. It's a shocking thing for me to have to say. The reason the entire Israeli media, including the left, Shavit and Barak David from Haaretz, were condemning Kerry, is because the deal he was forcing and pressuring Israel to accept was a deal he made with Qatar and Turkey, two terrorist regimes who financially and otherwise support Hamas and Hezbollah. He didn't do it with Egypt. And the deal was an immediate ceasefire. You have to stop dealing with the tunnels. You have to open up all the borders so anything can come through. You have to create a seaport, anything come through. You have to allow billions of dollars in aid. And we want a discussion of the underlying causes. Can you imagine? The underlying causes why Hamas is doing this. That's like having a discussion of the underlying causes why the Nazis are killing Jews. It's called Jew hatred and nothing else. So this is the Obama-Kerry deal, and that's why 19-0, it was rejected unanimously, left and right, and the entire leftist media in Israel condemned it. And only recently, America condemned Israel for allegedly intentionally killing people at a school. Now it seems like that's not even true. So before there was an investigation, they used the word condemn. Should an ally be condemning anything Israel does when they know the pressures Israel's under? And to use the word condemn when the whole world is becoming increasing the amount of anti-Semitism, where they're screaming death to the Jews in Europe and even in New York City, he should not add fuel to the fire by condemning them in this sort of situation. And what else has President Obama done in the last week or two? He's made an $11 billion arms deal with Qatar, the biggest funder of terrorism and Hamas in the world, and a $4 billion arms deal with Turkey, also a major defender of Hamas and other terrorist groups. I think this may be illegal under the Arms Act, that because you're not allowed to give arms to a terrorist regime. So Obama, in one way after another, has shown his sympathies lie with Hamas over Israel. He has Hamas's back more than he has Israel's back. No matter how many times he says it, those are simply words. The actions betray his real intentions of pressuring Israel to stop defending themselves.
Okay, by the way, the Obama administration made the Iron Dome possible. Why isn't that an action that sort of balances your other concerns?
I thank God that the Americans, Congress, has supported Iron Dome. In the past, President Obama has tried to reduce by 70% the amount of money. It is Congress that's always reinstated the money. And now, under enormous, this terrible war that Israel's involved in, Congress has allocated $225 million for the Iron Dome. President Obama and Senator Reid, the leader of the Senate, tried to link this to the immigration bill to make it very hard to pass. That's what they did under enormous pressure from people in Congress and from Democratic donors. President Obama delinked it from the immigration bill and signed it. Had he not signed it, it would have been overridden. It was almost unanimous support in Congress for this bill, so Obama had no choice. Had he vetoed it, it would have been overridden and he would have looked awful. And his Democratic donors, Jewish donors, which are huge, would have been extremely horrified by this. So Obama supported this only kicking and screaming, knowing he really couldn't stop it.
Mm-hmm. I have not seen major coverage of the Susan Rice meeting with Jewish leaders and the extent to which Israel was told by America to conform to certain requirements that America had for them, all of which, as you described them, seem to be in Israel's, against Israel's self-interest. I haven't seen that reported a lot. It's not like I haven't heard it at all. Do you think there's a reason why it doesn't have widespread, this information is not widespread either in the American media? I haven't seen it at all in the New York Times, by the way, in general. And I don't know whether American Jewish leadership feels in some way, I remember what Stephen Wise was convinced to do during the Roosevelt administration, which was that if you wanted to have any kind of administration support, you had to go along with Roosevelt's overall view. Is there something akin to that going on today where Jewish leadership, I don't know, and again, here I'm pleading ignorance, and I want the audience to hear me say it. Sometimes I think I have something that I want to share with the audience. Here, I do not know the answer, but I am giving my perception. My perception is that the extent to which the Kerry deal had so many specifics which were anti-Israel, I don't think that was made public enough from within the American Jewish community. What is your sense?
I'm not aware. I'm not aware. I may be incorrect. That any serious Jewish organizations criticized this deal. First of all, it's hard to know for sure precisely what the deal was. I only know about the deal from what I read in the Israeli media, frankly. I'm not aware of any Jewish organization that criticized this deal except for us, COA. The meeting last Monday with Susan Rice that I attended, most of the speech was quite wonderful in that she repeatedly said, we have Israel's back.
Yes, but we put that on Shalom TV. I thought she was fabulous.
Repeatedly said, you're not alone. Repeatedly said, Israel has a right to defend themselves. Well, those are nice words that I appreciate and enjoy. But the only operative phrase was, but Israel must support an immediate, unconditional ceasefire.
But in her speech, she did not mention all the things you mentioned.
Yes.
You can't. She never said you have to stop going after tunnels.
No, not in her speech.
Yes.
This was the Kerry deal.
Yes. So I have not heard the specifics of the Kerry deal made public the way you described them right now.
You are right. The only place I saw that deal discussed in the media was the Israeli media. I also have not seen it in the American media. I agree, and it's quite shocking. In other words, the deal was so frightening on its face. Apparently, the American media was protecting Kerry, because the deal was really absurd and dangerous for Israel. Of course, Kerry claims it was only a draft, so it wasn't any final deal. But even as a draft, it was absurd that even Ari Shavit and Barak David, I think is his name, of Haaretz, left-wing guys, thought this was an outrage. But you're right, I saw the details of that deal nowhere in the American media. I did not.
Before I lose you, I want to ask one more question, which is related, and you've alluded to it a number of times, and I want you to take one moment to talk about it. First of all, you are the child of survivors, correct?
I was born in a displaced persons camp in Germany. I lost almost all my aunts and uncles and cousins, and my father, Oliver Shalom, lost his first family.
The wave of anti-Semitism now in Western Europe, I get chills just thinking of it.
Yeah.
It is, in my mind, it is so reminiscent of the precursor of Nazi Germany, or the early years, in the early 30s, but after the brown shirts came to power. I have two questions for you. One, is there something you want us to do? And am I wrong when I say to Mort Klein, I'm a student of Jewish history to some extent, know that in pre-Nazi Germany, German Jews felt totally at home in Germany, fought in World War I. They were veterans of World War I. They didn't see this coming. And there are people who say, as I do, America is a totally different social experiment. And the way in which America is set up, and the way in which toleration, even if it is not practiced in the ideal all the time, is such a bedrock principle of this country, that what happened in Germany and what is happening again in Western Europe cannot happen here. I want to know your response to how do you view the anti-Semitism in Western Europe, and do you ever worry it would come here?
As a Jew, let alone as a child of survivors, I've never been so frightened in my life as an American Jew living in America. I personally had trouble sleeping for several weeks. I'm depressed. I'm very worried and concerned about what I see. I feel like I'm living through the 30s. Is this really happening? But what's most troubling, and what needs to happen that isn't happening, is for political leaders in Europe must publicly condemn this, and more than that, publicly make it clear any Arab deaths in Gaza, which have been widely overstated by the Hamas Health Ministry. No, this is Hamas reporting the number of deaths, and all real experts say the vast majority are terrorists who are being killed. That's not reported. But political leaders must say every death is due to the Hamas missiles. No Hamas missiles, no Israeli retaliation. Every political leader must make speeches saying the Jews have a right to their state. The borders must be finally determined. They have a right to their state, and explain why they have the right to their state. Condemn Hamas and publicly condemn the PA-Hamas alliance. And President Obama must condemn publicly that these, even in America, you're having death to the Jews rantings in the streets of America, even in New York recently. Obama should be condemning Hamas, and both Obama and European leaders must be holding Mahmoud Abbas accountable. It's a Fatah, Mahmoud Abbas, Hamas alliance. They're now one. So Abbas should be held accountable. Why aren't you speaking out against this? So I have not heard Obama condemning Hamas and making it clear it is the fault of Hamas why there are any deaths. And if you're screaming about the deaths, blame Hamas, not Israel. They're only defending themselves. None of this will be happening without Hamas missiles. And Obama should be making public speeches that the Jews have a right to their state in Eretz Yisrael, with the final borders hopefully to be decided in the future, and make it clear that Israel has offered full statehood twice in the last 15 years, rejected, and I'm not hearing any of this from the administration. And President Obama should stop forcing Israel to have ceasefires without Israel making that decision. Israel should make the decision about a ceasefire as to what's in Israel's interest in terms of defending their citizens, not President Obama and the world. And instead, we see Obama pressuring and threatening Israel and condemning Israel, which only encourages and gives strength to the anti-Semites of both America and Europe to continue this, feeling they have the support in some sense of America and of Europe. So I have seen a lack of condemnation and a lack of speeches supporting Israel in both Europe and America. And this is very frightening, because that was the same thing you saw in Europe. There is a difference. The Jews have a country. We have, thank God, a powerful army. We can defend ourselves. But the political response has not been all that much better now compared to what it was in the 30s. And that is frightening. And I want Jewish leaders, I want Jewish citizens and supporters of Israel to write to their members of the House and Senate demanding public condemnations by every member of the House and Senate and by the administration what's going on, and how Hamas is causing every death, not Israel. I haven't seen any of that. And we're on the Hill desperately trying to get more people speak out on this. And that's what has to be done now. It's a frightening time, and we have to take it seriously.
Kol hakavod to you.
Well,
Mort
thank you,
Klein,
Mort.
you have been a marvelous leader for ZOA for more than 20 years.
It is more than 20 years.
So continued strength, go from strength to strength, and you continue to champion the cause of the Jewish people in the state of Israel, and you're always welcome at this table. I hope I speak with you very, very often. Thank you.
I appreciate it. All we are doing is telling the truth of the Arab war against Israel, and truth is not a political position. It's not right or left. And by the way, very few people criticize ZOA anymore for saying Oslo and Gaza was a terrible mistake. One after another, privately, Jewish leaders are coming over to me and telling me, my God, unfortunately you were right about all that, and we're sorry we were right as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mort.
Mort Klein, president of ZOA, the Zionist Organization of America. And again, he says it as he sees it. I'd be very interested in hearing your reaction to Mort Klein's observations. Please be in touch with me. Email me, write me, post on our Facebook wall, tweet me. I look forward to hearing from you. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'chaim, my friends, to life.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support Shalom TV with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the Shalom TV website homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to GEM. To GEM, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive on DVD with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.
L'chaim is a presentation of Jewish Education in Media.